Hey everyone, this is Adam Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology, and today we are going to take a look at all of the major astrological transits of the month of December. And with me is my good buddy Alex Amorosi, colleague and friend of mine, also an astrologer. You guys have seen him before. He's come through to talk about the astrology. He's actually here with me this month to talk about your horoscopes too. So Friday you'll get those horoscopes coming out, and you'll get today you've got the overview for the month. So hopefully our tag teaming will serve you well this month. Before we get into it today, don't forget to like and subscribe, share a few comments. You guys know that helps the channel to grow. We really appreciate it. Also, a big thank you to everyone. This week we hit 50,000 subscribers. We're really excited about that. I have a few special rewards that we added to the Kickstarter as a thank you for hitting the 50,000 subscriber mark. A few good deals we hope you'll take advantage of. The Kickstarter every year happens the last month and a half of the year. And it is a time that we try to raise funds to support our staff and myself for content creation in the year ahead. We have a huge audience that's grown over the years, and we are so thankful. I've been doing this Kickstarter as a way of supporting myself, my family, and now a staff for the 9 years. Every year we've grown in terms of the number of backers that we've had to support the program. So we're hoping that we can keep gathering support. As of the time I'm making this, we're at about 350 backers. We're trying to get to 1,608. We still have over a month to go, so plenty of time, but we do need your help. When you donate, and by the way, you can find the link to donate in the description of this video or in the comments section below. I leave a link there so that you can link right over to the Kickstarter. When you do so, you can donate and choose a reward. A lot of different rewards to choose from, exclusive videos and different kinds of readings I offer. Best thing that I offer is 50% off on all of my online courses. And when you bundle them together, the savings go up. For celebrating hitting the 50,000 subscriber mark, we also added the 4-pack for almost 75% off all of the classes. So if you bundle 4 of any of my programs together, the price goes down to almost 75%, which is the best sale I've ever offered in almost 13 years. I just thought, let's do something really, really special for people who want to really take a deep dive. If you get that 4-class pack, by the way, you can redeem that anytime you want. So you could take, you could take 1 class per year for 4 years if you wanted to. They're each 1-year programs that I teach, and then there's some mini courses. You can use them however you want. You can redeem them whenever you want. All the classes are online. You can go at your own pace. If you have any questions about the programs, because I know that would be a big commitment for people, but it's a really good deal. Any questions you have, email us info@nightlightastrology.com. The other reward that we added as a thank you gift is the Oracle Speaks, which is a 12-part series that I am doing exclusive for people who donate to the Kickstarter. That is taking place in the fall of 2023. In this 12-part series, I explore the divinatory nature of astrology, from unique client readings to interviews with spectacular guests and thinkers in the field of astrology, to historical research and stories about astrology and divination, and personal lessons learned from 13 years and almost 15,000 charts. And we're really asking, what is the nature of astrology? My point of view is that astrology is not exactly a science. It's more like a form of divination. But what does that mean? And also, if you say that, what does it mean to develop a relationship with an oracle? That's a very specific thing that a lot of people like, oh yeah, I know what that means if I cast tarot, but what does it really mean? And what does it require of us if we want to become, say, better and more and serve people well through astrology? Then we have to learn how to develop a relationship with an oracle. What does that even mean, and how do you do that? So this series is dedicated to that, and it'll be a 12-episode series that starts in the fall, exclusive for people who donate. I will not be putting this on sale ever again. So it's only this one special thing that I'm doing as a way of saying thank you for hitting that 50,000 subscriber mark. And hopefully it's something that people will find really useful and valuable for students of astrology. All right, well, lots of interesting transits to get into here in the month of December. I am very happy to have my buddy Alex with me to unpack it for you guys. Alex, welcome back.
Hey, Adam. All right.
I feel like we just saw each other recording horoscopes.
Yeah. You always think of, remember in the comics we read as kids, it was like, and later the same day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, totally. Later the same day. All right, let's say we just did all 12 sign horoscopes. You guys will get those tomorrow.
We did.
If you want to learn more about Alex's fantastic work, he is a healer, an intuitive, a coach, and an astrologer. And his Instagram is Alex Amorosi Healing. Alex came through my programs and we bonded right away because he has a yoga background. So did I. And so I just couldn't recommend Alex highly enough when it comes to his readings. I also want to guide you over to his website, which is alexamorosi.com. If you guys know, Alex has been on the past couple of months and has been like, I have a website that I'm building. Well, it's done, and I want to show you it because it's awesome. So here is Alex's website, alexamorosi.com. And you can, when you scroll down, you'll see his astrology offerings right there. He also has coaching and intuitive or psychic sessions. Fantastic person to work with. I can't recommend Alex's work highly enough. So check that out. You can book through the website. Alex, anything that you want to add to this while I'm here?
No, just thank you so much for showing it, and I'm just so happy to have it done. Oh my God.
Building a website, like for people, you were saying earlier, like you don't consider yourself to be a real techie person, and that, you know, can be hard.
No, but I'm also a Sag, so I'm prone to exaggeration even about my own talents sometimes. And I'm like, oh yeah, it's the website, you know, like Squarespace makes it so easy. And then I was saying before, you know, I was 911 texting my friend Ryan, who's an amazing web person. He's just like, don't worry, I got you. I got you.
That's great.
And so they were really, really helpful in getting me getting it going. But I'm really happy to have it done. Thanks for showing it.
Yeah, totally. And, you know, I tell like students in my programs, when we go through like the business of astrology and how do you develop an astrology practice, they're always get to that part where like, how do I have a website? I've never done this before. And I'm always like, you know, keep it simple. If people can book a reading with you on the website you build, that is really all that matters, because you just want a space where you can, maybe you can showcase some, if you have a blog or something, but like, you know, keep it simple. It doesn't have to be the world's most amazing thing as long as it's functionally helpful. I think that's what I say to my students anyway.
I totally agree. You know, one thing I realized when I book with astrologers that I really like, or I hear them on a podcast, I basically want to go to the website and be able to book.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so I hope that I made it simple with that to do. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. On that note, we have a ton of really good astrology transits to get into. I'm going to go ahead and put the real-time clock up and let's dive in. I'm going to just as usual, Alex and I will sort of ping pong back and forth. Now, I have not taken, I look through every transit of the month and then I narrow it down to those that I think are going to be most important. So I do leave some out, but there's a lot here this month that we'll be looking at. Let's go ahead and start on the first of the month. We'll work our way through. In the early part of the month, Venus is really involved in the action. We can see right away that Venus in the very first of the month going through an opposition to Mars. My wife and I found ourselves getting into an argument as this transit was starting to come into that 3-degree range. And I stepped back. I literally took a step back, and like we were in the kitchen, I took a step back and I went like this. And I said, Venus is opposite Mars right now. I just remembered. And it was like, well, my wife is like, she tolerates this, you know, for so many years now that we've been together. She's like, okay, wait, what is that? Oh, okay. Yeah, right. The lovers, they're quarreling. Okay. So we're fighting right now. And that's perfectly mirroring the thing. Shut up. We're still fighting, you know.
You know? That's super cute that that's happening, but I'm still right.
I know exactly. What do you think about Venus opposite Mars? Give us some things to think about.
Oh, you know, that can definitely be one idea of it, but can also be like, you know, we've a little bit playful and creative tension, you know, that is built up between the masculine and the feminine. You know, Sag and Gemini both are signs where if you don't take it hyper seriously and you just kind of laugh, or you find some way to sort of release the tension, I think it can dissipate fairly fast. But you know, Venus and Mars, though they are considered opposites in the ancient system of astrology, also dance together, and they happen to be dancing together in an opposition, which can lock horns. But I think that it's a way that we can really discover ways to sort of playfully and in fun ways release the tension that is built up by some sort of like head of steam just starting to get going or something like that.
Yeah, totally. I think a lot about Venus and Mars looking enviously at one another through an opposition. I want what you have. You want what I have. I want what you have. But no one's, maybe they aren't saying that to one another. There was a scene, someone reminded me of this recently, and I really can't remember who said this, but someone said it. It was not me. And they were talking about that scene in Moulin Rouge where the character played by Ewan McGregor Is that his name? Do
Yep.
you remember that?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
He is looking sort of enviously at the Duke who's having the relationship with Nicole Kidman's character. Do you remember
Mm.
that?
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
he's like, and I think Roxanne plays. Does that sound
Mm-hmm.
sort of familiar?
Yes.
I could be wrong about this, but um, I feel like these two planets, like the tango, the playfulness, but also the passion and maybe some kind of envy, but it's driving some kind of synthesis too. So I'm always hesitant to be like, just avoid quarrels when planets come into opposition, especially the lovers, because it's like, well, half of good sex is the quarrel. You know what I mean? Like,
Right. Exactly.
so you know what I mean? I'm not at all advocating for any kind of actual violence, or you know what I'm saying. It's in a
Oh,
healthy
absolutely.
relationship where people are respecting one another, the power struggle is part of the bliss, is what I'm saying.
Right, and that there's the build up and the release. There's the in music we would say the five chord and the one chord. There's the tension and then the opening from the tension. And so there's like, yeah, I think the Venus opposite Mars, yeah, it can be that jealousy, but there's a possibility for some lightness to come of it, if it's understood to be sort of like the tango is a performed drama.
Right.
That sort of idea. Those work well with that.
Well, the next day, Mercury will be in a square with Neptune. This comes through right on the first and the second.
Yeah.
Mercury's square with Neptune happening at the same time is especially interesting because to me, that could easily mean that within the context of, let's say, any kind of heated exchange or passionate exchange, that there's maybe at best a kind of romantic, playful, charming, intoxicating, Mercury Neptune. At the worst, it would be like deception, manipulation, gossip, betrayal, untruths, gaslighting,
Mhm.
like anything that would be like, you're not seeing something clearly, or I'm not saying something that's real and true, something like that.
Yeah, I was thinking a lot about this transit as I was looking at it. It's a great transit for storytelling. It's not a great transit for fact telling.
Yeah,
Um,
good one.
like I was thinking, my grandmother, who's my nana, who is the only one of my grandparents who lived into my adulthood. When I was a kid, she would tell these like semi made up stories, like the exploding chicken soup, and she was very theatrical. She had this old school Boston accent. She goes, and then the soup went all over the floor and all over the chair and all of it. And I don't think this really happened, but as a kid, you're like, wow, that's the coolest thing. Your whole soup exploded. That was like a Mercury Neptune thing. It didn't matter if it was true, but if you're having a conflict or you're getting into it with someone or you're trying to resolve something around, maybe like Adam said, those feelings of, the sitting behind the scenes and watching and maybe feeling jealous or envious, it could turn into something where you're sort of just spinning out words that you're not considering. That's a very, very easy thing to happen with Mercury and Neptune. Or like you said, it could be even just blatant deception,
Yeah, yeah.
or deliberately trying to override somebody else's reality.
Yeah, Venus and Mercury are both going through squares to Neptune. I mean, let's just fast forward this a little bit. On December
Yeah.
4th, Venus then squares Neptune just a couple of days later. That's our next transit. And um, to me, when you put both of those, you're saying, okay, you're both going to go through that square. Um, I feel like the romantic intoxication,
Mm-hmm.
mind, body, spirit, completely swept up in something, and that energy is somehow running contrary to Mars retrograde in Gemini, which feels much more analytical and airy.
Mm-hmm.
So, on the one hand, maybe Mars retrograde is being asked to chill out and take a date night to the museum, to fall in love with Renaissance art, or do you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah,
go
totally.
see a
Totally.
concert or something. On the
Yeah.
other hand, maybe, Venus and Mercury are trying to convince Mars to buy a house that's like three income ranges too high. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure. Night at the museum starring Mars retrograde in Gemini. Um, totally. I mean, it makes sense. I think one of the things I always love in Liz Green's Neptune book, which is one of my favorite books on astrology, let alone a planet. is the idea of glamour and Neptune and glamour. And it's very easy, I think, with Venus and Neptune to sort of you can become consumed with like the glitter and the glamour that's
Hmm.
under the surface with Mars retrograde and in Mercury's sign. It might be trying to analyze something or see something that's under the surface of that glamour. And it may not be a bad thing, but it's always important, I think, with Venus Neptune contacts, especially in hard aspects, to just be aware of you may be seeing a shimmer over something that you want to see under too.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I'm looking at this and I'm thinking, okay, one of the things that I've been looking forward to for a long time is Ashley and I are going to see Les Mis because it's coming here, and
Oh,
I've
nice.
never seen it before, and she has, and of course, everyone says like, this is one of the ones you have to see.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen the movie, I love the music, so I'm like, I'll be seeing this right as this aspect is happening. So I think it also speaks to this kind of romantic, theatrical,
Yeah.
artistic energy that's in the air. And isn't it interesting that that play is also in great part about revolution? And
Yep.
so, I wonder about the pairing of ideas and art and beauty and revolution, or like rebelling mentally or ideologically from something.
For sure. For sure.
I find that the things that you end up watching under certain transits, especially those things that really capture your imagination, will often speak exactly to the themes of the transit.
So interesting how those synchronicities happen too, right? Where you might not even know the transit's happening, but you bought the tickets or the show is just appearing at that time.
Yeah,
And it's like,
yeah.
isn't that cool? Like, I didn't even know the transit was happening, but that really speaks to this whole uh, confluence going on.
I had a student of mine once who, speaking of that, who she was an avid moviegoer, and
Yeah.
she collected all of the stubs to her movies. Did I ever tell you about this before?
No.
Okay, so she had like, like one of those old school like metal lunch pails or metal lunch boxes, like Transformers or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
So she had like a metal lunchbox like that. It was really funny. And she put like all of her, if I'm remembering this correctly, that was what it was. She put all of her movie stubs, and I think it was like 200 of them or something, from
Yeah.
all of these movies over the course of like 15 years. And she collected them and she put them into this thing. And she would, because she had this photographic memory for movies that she loved and had seen. And so she put them in, and she was a tarot reader, but she started pulling stubs to speak to
Oh, wow.
people's situations, so that the movie, the actors, the people, the things she knew about the movie, the scenes could somehow come up in her memory and speak to the clients in their question.
Genius.
Yeah, totally.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Oh,
was like,
that's
that is so badass. I love that idea so much. If only I was, I just throw away my stubs. I gotta start collecting them.
yeah.
And then I'll be like, hey, what was that movie? Which one was that? Oh yeah, okay. I mean, some movies I never forget, but a lot of movies I do. So
Yeah.
especially now
Yeah.
that we live in the Marvel universe where almost every movie is completely forgettable.
Yes.
I'll say.
Cutter.
I'm sorry.
It's
Are
it's
you? I don't like Marvel movies. I'm not a
no,
big fan.
I don't. I'm actually not I'm more of the stay with Star Wars, Lord of the Rings. It, that's my sort of flavor of
That's what
nerd.
I'm saying. That's what I'm
I
saying.
did like WandaVision. That was a really great show that Marvel put out, and I thought
Oh
that
yeah,
was a really interesting idea of
yeah. I
like
saw that. That
fantasy
was
and
okay.
reality. That was good. Yeah,
Yeah, I had enough like like people that I really respect telling me like you should see that. And there's been a
yeah,
few Marvel movies I've liked that I thought were really like well done, but like, it's just there's a new one every week, and it's like
yeah.
god,
I
it's
know.
just feels like it's killing real art at times, but I am get off my lawn. So, okay. All right. December 6th, Mercury squares Jupiter. The fun gets funner.
hmm
And then like we're not too long after that, on the 9th, Venus goes through the square to Jupiter. Let's see the sequence as a whole. So on the 6th, Mercury squares Jupiter. On the 7th, we get the full moon in Mercury's sign of Gemini with Mars. That's sort of the midpoint of the Mars retrograde cycle. And then, of course, the next day you have the sun opposing Mars. And then you get Venus square Jupiter, and then Sun square Neptune. So it's this little confluence, and I'm drawing it out. I know that sounds like a lot, but it's really just these planets pinging off from one another from like the 6th through the 14th, about a full week. Talk about any of that.
Well, quickly what you could think about that is that since Jupiter is so involved, Mercury is squaring Jupiter at the moment, as the full moon is going to start to come through, that does just lend exaggeration to the full moon itself. The full moon is already a culmination point and the midpoint of the Mars retrograde cycle. And you have the host of the full moon being hopped up by Jupiter, which is just about to change into Aries. Now, it's still Jupiter in Pisces in its own rulership. You still get the Pisces coolness and compassion, but you can also get with Pisces too, especially Mercury in Sagittarius square Jupiter in Pisces. Things not quite as they seem. It can get sacrificial. With Mars involved too, that could edge into some kind of sacrifice or feeling self-sacrificial. Or again, getting lost in what is imagination and philosophy versus fact and logic. Those are some things that just come to mind with that confluence.
Yeah, I feel like the full moon in Gemini on the 7th, and I'll put that back up in case people want to see that date. Let me just do that here. The full moon in Gemini on the 7th, to me, speaks to, and we focus on this in our horoscopes tomorrow, it speaks to the process of Mars retrograde and whatever it's been doing, sort of reaching a full moon moment, reaching a moment of, blossoming, of coming into awareness, of being illuminated, of a spotlight being shined on it. And so when I think of that happening at the same time that the sun in Jupiter's sign is opposing Mars, right? It's the midpoint of the Mars cycle. And then you've got this Venus Mercury square to Jupiter. Then Jupiter moves into fiery Aries not too much longer. I think of a moment where what I would say is the process, the most personal thing would be to look at the whole sign house of Gemini in your birth chart, because that's sort of the epicenter. Whatever's been changing or shifting, whatever kind of circumstances Mars retrograde indicates in your life, by virtue of probably the topics of that whole sign house, when you see this full moon come through, along with all of these other planets, it's like it's bringing it all to a head. And I think that's the most general thing. But then beyond that, I would say it's probably about ideology, faith, belief, ideas that are competing or conflicting. Where? Within yourself, at work, in your career, with your loved ones, in your family, around the topic of what you're going to do with your future, or resources, and those that you need, don't need, people in your life, what kind of communities you want to be a part of, sort of. And I could see things sort of coming to a head in this moment as fantasies are challenged by like a hardcore rational voice. It's a very potential for like a lot of splitting and polarizing between extreme ideas and views comes to my mind, or suddenly becoming just a little bit more logical and rational, and saying, okay, I feel really strongly about something, or something is very compelling and beautiful and interesting and attractive to me, but what do I really think about it? Or can I weigh the evidence? Almost like a cognitive. I think it's in cognitive behavioral therapy, where one of the things that it'll do is, like, if you have a really strong emotional response to something, kind of sit down and do a little meta work with that, and in order to slowly shift patterns and so forth. But I'm not like any expert, just little things that I've heard people say about it. If people are, by the way, in the comment section, tell us if I have any sense of what CBT is about. But regardless, I think a questioning and a kind of analyzing or scrutinizing of desires, attractions, conclusions, beliefs is probably coming up really strongly. But I would also say that it's also possible that an overly rational part of ourselves is being asked to surrender or let go somehow during these transits.
Yeah, I agree. It's a really interesting full moon right at the midpoint of the cycle. That's just wow.
Yeah, exactly. And
The
then
retrograde cycle of Mars.
yeah, yeah, totally. I think it's interesting that after all of this is done, if we push forward to about the 17th, then you get Mercury trining Uranus. And the reason that I like that is that all of a sudden, what has been, a kind of like, a T square is a lot of tension. And again, the potential for splitting is really implied by a lot of those oppositions. Um, I mean, one simple way of putting a Mars opposition to the sun is to say that my sense of purpose is facing some direct conflict, obstacle, or challenge,
Mhm.
and it's a crisis that I have to deal with or confront. Well, after all of that passes, one of the big transits that happens pretty much right away is Mercury trining Uranus. Feels like, what you describe it first. Tell me what you think.
Oh, I mean, that's just innovative, out of the box thinking that comes to you suddenly, sudden ideas, sudden and practical too. What's really nice about this too, Adam, in a larger context, is after the sun passes the square to Neptune, Neptune has been so emphasized since August through different hard aspects from different planets. And that is going to start to fade as we get in deeper into December. And you start to get these lovely Earth trines between Mercury and Uranus, between Venus and Uranus, that while Uranus still has its, is retrograde and has this destabilizing quality, these are happening in very practical signs where there are productive, practical, tangible things that you can get insights about that may have felt kind of nebulous or philosophical or hard to nail down earlier in the month. So I really love that these Earth trines are coming through on the heels of all of that Neptune activation that's been happening.
Yeah, it exactly. It feels like, okay, let's, Mercury trines Uranus, both in Earth signs, and Mercury is also the host of the Mars retrograde. It's as though we're moving past the place of a challenge or conflict on the mental or ideological level, and we're moving into the practical, and it's constructive and it's effective, and it's solving something, or it's getting the insight that's needed to take it forward. So to me, that strikes me as like a point of resolution from a lot of conflict mentally.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Jupiter goes into Aries on the 20th. We spend a lot of time. You guys will see in the horoscopes that we did tomorrow. You will see we spent a lot of time on Jupiter's ingress into Aries. I did a video earlier this week on Jupiter's ingress into Aries. So I'm going to let Alex talk about this one a bit. What do you expect from this one? People have heard me say a lot about this one already this week.
Well, I think, Jupiter, the planet of expansion, blessings, the greater benefic, hitting the very first degree of the zodiac. Aries is, we think of Aries as there's the idea of it being impulsive and brash and, fast moving, but it's also like the sign of the Big Bang. It's the sign of the sudden creation. It's the sign of something completely new being created out of nothing. So I think Jupiter coming in here, and you definitely check out in the horoscopes. We went through each house to see what is happening for you specifically in your life, but brings a sense of creative possibility, but not just like I'm creating something, a sudden spark of something completely new. You can have with Jupiter and Aries too. I always think about one of my absolute favorite stories. I probably talked about this before. Is the novel Dune and the Dune movies. Is of Jupiter is a very Paul Atreides type, in Aries a very Paul Atreides type character where you are sort of fighting for a noble cause. You are trying to take back something that was wrongfully taken. There's a sense of justice and nobility in Aries too. With Jupiter, you have to be really careful of going that extra step too far, which is something that happens, in Dune. Paul's followers basically go berserk, and lots of people suffer for it. So it is one of those planets where I think that there's this sense of wanting to restore a moral order, take back what feels like it was wrongfully taken. There might be conflicts around it. It's just a sense of not going that extra step too far, which Jupiter and Aries can do without realizing it's doing it.
Yeah, yeah. Nicely said, and I like that, especially when you said that it can just go that one step too far, and
Yeah.
and that's, just that there's a lot of learning that takes place if you do take that one step too far. So a lot of the times I feel like the nice thing about Jupiter is that it averts disaster, but
Yeah.
there may be a little bit of loss at times. It's Jupiter in a Mars ruled sign. Mars is still retrograde.
Yeah.
Um, on the 22nd, the sun squares Jupiter. I feel like at the solstice moment when light is returning, one of the things I said this week, now that's metaphorically speaking. You don't have to, this does not have to be a literal representation of what the light is doing where you live in the southern hemisphere, if that's where you live. So the zodiacal seasonal orientation is symbolic. The sun squaring Jupiter at the place where the light returns, and Jupiter at the first sign of the zodiac, which is now the first 6 signs of the zodiac where light is dominant. Really strong theme of like a heroic upsurge of light. And
Mm.
that, I think most people will experience, that the benefit of that is that you can experience that as a real feeling of support.
Hmm. Hmm. And that, it might feel, with the ruler of Jupiter retrograde, it might feel like that's like slightly delayed or is pulled back a little bit. But I
That's
so
true.
agree
Yeah.
with that, Adam. I so agree with that. I think that like there's a hopefulness or at least a vision that starts to return with those two planets squaring each other. Both Jupiter, the first sign of spring, the sun in the winter solstice, right? Those going back. So yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and on the same day, or right around the same time as the sun square to Jupiter, Venus is also trine to Uranus, and my experience is that usually has a very like a sudden twist of unexpected good fortune or favorable or pleasant experiences that are sort of like, wow, I wasn't expecting that, but that was really nice. But in Earth
Mhm.
signs, that could also be very constructive, like very practical somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with Mars retrograding, and one thing I've been hearing a lot from clients and from friends is they've asked me repeatedly over the first part of the Mars retrograde, are we in a Mercury retrograde? It feels like a Mercury retrograde because there's been all that square to Neptune and the nebulousness of Mars retrograde and Mercury sign square to Neptune, that nebulousness. And now I think with these Earth trines, I just love them because, like you said, productive, tangible. It might be that first inkling of feeling like, okay, here are some practical things that I can do in what used to feel like a fog or a mist
Right.
earlier in November and December.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's nicely put. Um, on the 23rd, we get a lineup in Capricorn, which we also talked about in horoscopes. You'll get this tomorrow. You get a new moon in Capricorn, followed on the 29th by a Mercury retrograde in Capricorn. So you see Mercury there turning retrograde in Capricorn. And so I'll just back this up a little bit so we can get them all together in one place. This lineup of Capricorn at the end of the month is interesting because the Mercury retrograde station comes close to Pluto and Venus, which is sort of a replay of last year when Venus was retrograde and sort of coincided with Mercury and Capricorn. Yeah, it's an interesting lineup in Cap. Suddenly, a big emphasis on Capricorn, as if we need any more, Capricorn. Everyone's so ready for Pluto to change signs and be like, okay, we're done.
And
What do you think
Saturn to
about
be out
this?
of rulership.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
exactly.
oh,
Let's get Saturn in a Jupiter sign.
oh, please. First of all, to Capricorn, I think this is the beginning of the swan song of the Capricorn emphasis that's been going on. Really since 2017, when Saturn entered Capricorn and has now been in his own signs for the last 5 years. I think, like you said, we're all ready for that. I'm like, girl, bye. I'm all set. I'm all
Yeah.
set with this. But what I would just say is, the new moon that's going to happen in Capricorn, and then going to Mercury retrograde, and with the stellium, it might be a time for, in whatever whole sign house it is in your chart, or when these Capricorn ideas of sort of diligence and achievement and nose to the grindstone type of ideas come up, tying together any last loose ends, because this is the last time we're going to have this kind of stellium in December, January, with Saturn in rulership for over 20 years. And so it's really, I think this is actually tying some of those loose ends of left over from those massive Capricorn emphasis transits, starting to tie those up a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is um kind of like it's kind of like, it reminds me of when you are uh done putting, the gifts under the tree. I'm thinking of a holiday image. And then it's like, okay, well, the gifts are all under the tree, but we've got to, put a plate out with cookies that look like they're half eaten for the kids. And, it's just like, there's all of these extra little things that you have to do to like make it all, or I mean, maybe a better example would be like, you get the tree into place and you get the lights on, and then you can like put all the decorations on or whatever. But there's this feeling of like, we're at the last sort of adorning touches of a long process in the whole sign house of Capricorn in your birth chart. And it's interesting that it stretches into January, and then just a little bit later, February, March, we hit Pluto changing signs. So there's definitely like a culmination in Capricorn happening right now, and reaching, I think, I made a video the other day where I was like, and you and I were talking about this before we started, the FU Saturn moment, and
Oh yeah.
that's kind of, I feel like that's where we're hitting this place where we're like, I'm at the beginning of the end with this. And you have to reach the limits of the planet of limits at times. You have to get to a place where you're just like, you might be the planet of restrictions, but I'm getting to a point where I have to say no to you. Something it's like almost like collectively people are reaching that moment too. At least that's what I've been. I rarely say anything like that, but I've just noticed it a lot in my clients' lives at that place in that whole sign house of Capricorn. People are just done with it,
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a long slog. You have Pluto there for the last 16 years, and then we had an unusual buildup, a pileup of planets in Capricorn moving through into 2020. So I think we all are ready. And giving yourself permission to, I think, Adam, what I really loved about that video you made about Saturn and just kind of be like, F you, Saturn, is that's part of the archetype itself. It gives you
Yeah.
permission to release the transit itself.
Yeah.
In a very Saturn-like way.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. There's so much that about, I think, my approach to Saturn before hitting that moment that was about tolerating, making room for blah, blah, blah. But none of that is reaching the limit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And I feel like Saturn was like, in all of your advocating for me, there's something you're missing, which is the point where you just want to bite your own fingers off. And like, when you get to that point, you'll get me a little bit more than you have been. It's been nice how you've been making room for me, but like, bite your knuckles off and then you'll really feel me,
So. Well, it's what well, it's true. It's like, I think there's a scene, it's a kind of common scene in stories or in different books or movies where there's a character who just has their head in their hands like this, and they just scream, or they're like, I can't take it. And then the next day there's some shift that happens, right? It's just letting yourself get to that point to release the pressure that's built up. Yeah.
Say like, Saturn is like the feeling of being constricted in a birth canal. And I think that there's there's a primal scream that comes from the baby, from the mother in that transition, and it's beautiful. But it's hitting that moment is probably where we're all at. And I mean, I don't think it happens all at once. I think with a Capricorn lineup like that, a long Mercury retrograde, a moon cycle starting in Capricorn, you probably start seeing that feeling of like reaching the end of a long process. The beginning of the end of a long process, which may actually stretch from like late December all the way till like March, when Saturn and Pluto both change signs.
Right. I agree. Yeah.
Anyway, that wraps it up. Alex, thank you so much for being here today and helping us get through the transits of December. Really appreciate you.
Thank you very much for having me, Adam. This is always so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, totally. And we'll do it again. If you want to find Alex, he is at alexamorosi.com. Instagram is alexamorosi healing. Check him out for reading or coaching work, all the different cool things that he does. Really grateful for you. I hope that you have everyone has a happy holiday season. If you guys, whatever you're celebrating this month, even if it's just taking a moment around the solstice, which we'll be sure to do here on the channel for sure. Also, don't forget, we are en route to 1,608 backers by the new year. That's our goal. You can find the link to the Kickstarter in the description of this video or the comments section below. When you go there, choose a reward and donate to support this channel, my staff in the year ahead. Really appreciate you guys. And that's what we've got for today. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you again later. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.